And we are live. Hi, good evening, everyone. Come on in. Welcome to Level Up Live. If you're here with us tonight in person, say hello so we know you're there. If you're watching on the replay, hashtag replay. I am very excited to introduce this evening's guest to you. So come on in, get comfortable because you're in for a treat. So I'm just going to read her bio. So we have with us this evening Dr. Heather Signorelli. Dr. Signorelli is a board certified pathologist and physician executive overseeing laboratories in a large healthcare system. Dr. Signorelli is also an entrepreneur who enjoys building businesses and owns a laboratory consulting company, as well as a full service medical billing and coding company with her husband. She is committed to helping physicians learn the business side of medicine through her podcast, RevMD. So let us welcome Dr. Heather Signorelli.
Hi,
Hi,
thank you.
Dr. Heather. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. I'm so excited to hear about all of the things that you do. And I feel like I don't really know where to begin. So I think I'm going to begin at the beginning. So your training is in pathology,
Yep.
right? So,
I'm a
so, so tell me about your current day to day.
So I am a triple board certified pathologist. Love my day job. I kind of got sorted out on the business side of medicine early in my career, so kind of in the administration world, and currently work for a big organization and enjoy working with them. Work to help oversee the clinical side of laboratories, and so really got kind of put into that business mind of medicine early, and was something that I think I gravitated towards because my mom was a nurse but ran hospitals, ran surgery centers. My stepdad was a doctor. And so I kind of got both of those worlds. I like to say from in utero, I think just the business side and now, I kind of do that as my day job. So sorry. And then, now that we've kind of gotten stable, my husband recently quit his job so that he could open and run the full service medical billing and coding company. And I help support that from a physician advisor perspective. So I like to stay busy and really just want to help both the hospital side as well as physicians be able to succeed in healthcare.
Wonderful. So now how did you go from what was your inspiration to go from running labs to opening this medical billing company? Can you tell me a little bit about that process?
Yeah, we just saw, physicians who were really struggling with that. And one of the things that we had hoped to do is make sure that their revenue was able to grow, that they had a reliable service, that it was data driven. And with my husband's background in software, it just was this nice fit since most of the practices do struggle with the software piece, making sure that the workflow makes sense and that the software matches what they're doing in the practice and that they're getting the metrics that they need to have a successful practice.
Okay, so it was was it hearing concerns that were expressed by other physicians? Okay, and you
Yes.
thought, okay, I got something that can help these guys.
Yeah, I was actually away and was sitting with a physician who had not been paid for over a year.
Wow.
And he expressed that what had happened was all related to his medical biller and lack of, um, ability to do that reliably and do that well. And we were just like, no, there's got to be a better way to do this. And we've hired some amazing team members who've helped us really do a good job and help support the team. And so that's where we're at.
So how is it structured? You mentioned team members. So if I were a practice owner and I wanted to engage you, how would this work?
Yeah, so we kind of have a multi-phase process when we're talking to a new practice. So we do a practice analysis at first, understanding what's going on, what are your volumes, what data do you have today, what technology do you use, and we actually have a guidebook that kind of steps through all of that information to get to know the practices as well as possible, so that then we can understand how can we better serve them. And then once we've decided, okay, it's a good match, We recognize that there's opportunity in the practice, they need help, we share the same vision. Then once, we're kind of signed up, we actually have a full transition guide that helps make it a smooth transition. We often hear the number one stress with practices is that they're afraid that when they come sign on, there's going to be a loss in revenue. And so we have found that this kind of onboarding and transition guide really helps make sure that there is no gap or there is no loss in revenue while there is a change being made.
Wow, that sounds incredible. So who are your target clients?
So target clients are really private practices. So laboratories to clinical private practices out there. We have multiple subspecialties today, and we really make sure that we're building our team based on the needs of our clients. So some clients have more specialized billing needs and specialized coding needs, and so we make sure that we have the staff available that have that knowledge or that skill set. And so we continue to kind of grow our team based on the growth of our practices.
Okay, so it sounds like you're able to help all specialties.
Yes. Yeah.
All comers.
Yeah. We've got 6 different specialties right now, if I remember correctly. So yeah, it's growing well, and we're just happy to be able to help them. That's our number one goal.
Great. So now tell me, when did you guys start this business?
About a year ago.
Okay. Wow. And it's grown.
Oh my gosh. Like, whew, in a good way though. I mean, we've been able to, again, I'm very, I love a good protocol. And so I think that has helped us have a standard process that we can help assess practices, onboard practices, and then monitor practices with the metrics that we set up and the benchmarks that we set up. And that really allows us to kind of have this standard way that we can help multiple practices at the same time.
So if a practice signs on with you, how much increase in revenue can they expect to see over their current company, depending on, of course, what you find when you run the numbers for them?
Yeah, we've seen a range from 10 to 30%. So it just depends on how bad things are. So,
Yeah.
But about that range is what we've seen in our experience so far. And I will say 2 of our larger practices had seen the largest revenue that, of their, last 12 months, because we do track and trend the last 12 months. So that we can actually see, okay, what's going on with charges, what's going on with productivity, what's going on with receipts, denials, AR, all of that.
Okay, great. I think there's a question in the chat, but I think it's pretty close to what I just asked you. You tell me if you think it's a little bit different. Someone's asking, what growth have you seen in the practices?
So we help support the billing side of it. Now we give the practices information around their productivity, meaning we help them see what CPTs they're billing. We help them see what claims and visits that they're doing on a month-to-month basis. We kind of help show them that data so they can say, oh, shoot, we need to focus on more new patient visits, or we need to up our marketing, or we changed marketing. How does that impact patient visits? So we're giving that data, but obviously the practice is the one helping grow the actual patient visits. Now, from a revenue perspective, revenue capture does have to do with the billing, and that's that 10 to 30% increase in revenue capture, depending on, again, what's been going on in the practice.
So you do find holes sometimes, places where, maybe they could be billing for something and they're not, or, they're undercoding, those
Yes.
kinds of things?
Undercoding, we haven't seen as big of an issue with. We are doing some coding audits that are actually going on right now. But really the number one thing is not chasing denials, not billing secondary insurances, not having a good solid front office process to where you are you missing demographics or missing current information or not checking eligibility or not doing a prior auth. All of those pieces add up to not being able to bill appropriately. And that's where you see loss of revenue. Now, that's going to happen from time to time, right? The key is to make sure that when that happens, that then you have people telling you like, hey, this doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Like you got to go fix this. And then we fix it together. And that's where you can set KPIs and say, okay, let's retrain the front office, or let's make sure you're credentialed, or, hey, we see you're out of network. What does that mean? And so if you're not getting that feedback from your biller, you don't know what to fix. And then your AR climbs up, and then you realize in 2 years, you've missed out on 30% of your revenue. And so it's having that communication with your biller to say, here's an issue, here's some solutions, let's work on this together. And that's that teamwork that is absolutely critical.
Wow. So now how long does it take to see the increase? You mentioned a 10 to 30% increase in revenue. Is that over what time period?
Typically 90 days or so. It just depends what's going on. Some of that may be cleaning up the old AR, which depending on how bad things are could take, 90 days plus. Or if it's, hey, we just need to clean up some of it, it can be as quick as 30 days. We've seen that range. So I would say 30 to 90-ish days is really what I see in order to kind of get that revenue back on track.
Great. That's pretty short, So tell me, what services do you offer? You mentioned a lot of things. It almost sounds like a practice consultant, even more, or as much as a billing and
Yeah.
coding consultant.
And that's kind of evolved as our little niche, right? I think, we kind of really do like to sit and think big picture. We like to identify manual processes. We like to make sure that things get automated. And so we do kind of consider ourselves more than a biller, although we don't really charge for that. That's just part of, our company's motto is really, around that strategic partner. So I would say, from a full service revenue cycle management, that's our nuts and bolts of our company. So, claim management, denials, et cetera. We work with partners that do the credentialing. We don't currently today do take that on, maybe sometime down in the future. We do have certified coders who will do coding audits. So that seems to be a popular thing right now. And if you haven't had a coding audit, it is something that we do recommend. Some recommend it annually. I would say at least every other year, just to make sure that coding's going well. If you are ever getting any letters from your insurance company, certainly make sure that you're getting help with coding audits or legal help earlier than later. Those are kind of the core features. And again, we really try and think through the process mapping of start to finish, patient registration to when the practice is getting paid, so that we can see, okay, what are all the little steps that are going on? What's working well? Which of these steps is not working well, so that we can help fix that.
So do you offer any training for staff members?
So if we identify something's going on wrong with the front office staff, our billers will do that. Yes. And they will say, hey, we've got an eligibility problem. Do you know who you're credentialed with? Do you know the plans you're credentialed with? How are you getting eligibility? Are you doing that through your EMR? And if none of that is going well, then it's like, okay, let's sit down and meet with the office manager, come up with a policy and procedure in order to help the practice implement that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, I'm a pathologist, so I love policies and procedures, and, that's like my thing. And that's what I do in my day job all the time. I'm very heavily involved in guidance documents and policies and procedures. And so that has really been something that our team really focuses on in making sure that the practices have that information for their own day-to-day.
But I also think you're in a very unique position because you understand the medicine of it. So it looks, you understand the medicine, you understand what goes into the visits. And so I feel like you're uniquely positioned to be of service to physicians. So guys, you really need to check Dr. Heather out.
Well, and we do try and make sure that that's while I'm not, involved in every aspect day to day, I am there as the physician advisor, making sure that the things that we're setting up with the team members, that the doctors are getting what they need, because there is something special. And this as a physician, there is something special about going through medical school, understanding the clinical aspect, understanding, the business on top of the clinical, just as kind of that puzzle that needs to be put together. And then you add in the software piece where my husband comes in, and the technology, because if you don't have technology that's working, then it just snowballs. And so when we add all those up, it really just becomes a good way to support the practices, which is what we're hoping to do.
Now, do you guys have any plans? Dr. Gilliard actually mentioned in the comments that this is something that's not really taught in residency. And I know that to be absolutely true. I didn't code one thing until I was an attending, and no one taught me. So everyone's self-taught. So I feel like there's probably a lot of money that's being left on the table, especially in the beginning. Do you guys have any plans of maybe broadening those educational services to medical schools and residency programs?
We've thought about it. We have the podcast right now and the free medical billing metric course that we do. And so both of those are just out there, for anybody to listen to. We have kind of shared the podcast with quite a few residency programs to kind of get the name out there. I do think it's important for us to be teaching the residents. I don't know the best way to do that right now, but that's a good suggestion. And I'd love to teach. So that would be something that would be really fun.
Okay, so now you just mentioned two things that we hadn't talked about. You talked about a podcast and you talked about a free training. Tell us more about that, especially we like free things.
Yes,
so tell us about these free things
free.
that are offered.
So the podcast RevMD, so that's REVMD, and that is on Apple Podcasts, and that is a weekly podcast where we talk about medical billing or practice stuff. I think we just recorded one on payer contracts, and we've done some on E&M coding and medical billing metrics. And then we also do about once a quarter a medical billing metric course where docs can come in and learn 5 metrics you need to be watching and monitoring in order to make sure your practice revenue is growing.
Wow. And you offer all of this for free.
Yeah.
That's great. You want to take care of us. We appreciate it so much.
we got to stick together.
Absolutely. Now you said something interesting a little while ago that I want to go back to, and this is more on a personal level. So you mentioned that you work with your husband. What is that like?
It's been actually a really good thing. I don't know. A, we haven't killed each other. 2, I think there's times where he's like, how did you know how to do that? And there's times, vice versa, where I'm like, how did you know that? I don't even know what language you're speaking. And so it's just kind of this thing that just kind of evolved. And again, it was planned, but it wasn't planned. It just kind of like an opportunity came and we kind of thought there's a need there and hey, we could service that need. And he, was looking for a change, and this is a great thing to use his skill set. And so, and then again, to me, it's about team members. We have some amazing team members who, we like to think that we treat well and that we pay well because we want them to have the same mission and culture that the company has in regards to really having, that goal of helping those practices, helping grow their revenue. And so, to me, it's team culture, working hard, and having the expertise to help practices thrive.
How large is your team?
We have just under 10 people so far. And then again, we grow as our practices grow. So, and so far that's been a good number of people, and we're all across the United States. And that has been, we've all been remote, which at first was like, well, do we want to have a brick and mortar? Do we want to do remote? But remote has worked. I think COVID has taught us a lot. And I think doing a lot via Zoom, turning on our cameras, having our team meetings has worked well.
So if there, and this is geared toward physicians. However, if there were medical billing persons who were watching this and they were interested in working with you, are you currently looking for more people? Are you planning to expand? How do people find you for something like this?
Yeah, I mean, we are always looking for qualified folks. We have actually interviewed a couple people that we don't quite have the next practice coming on for a couple more weeks, but so I feel like we've been on a good growth pattern of hiring and training and stuff, and we're always about finding the right people. So if anybody wants to find us, we have a website. It is a long name, but it is nationalrevenueconsulting.com. And so there's a contact us button. You can get to our metric mastermind from there. We have details on, if people want more information on RPM or CCM services, which we don't provide, but we have great partners that we really rely on. And then you can always email us at info@nationalrevenueconsulting.com. nationalrevenueconsulting.com.
Okay, so now you're throwing out acronyms. So
Yes.
tell us about this RPM and the CCM. I was going to ask you about that next anyway.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So remote patient monitoring and chronic care management. And so these are some of the CPTs that are actually increasing in value in terms of reimbursement. And so these are things that you can help patients that meet certain criteria to really get revenue in your practice. And so it's things that you're doing while they're not in the office. So remote patient monitoring is, blood pressure, glucose or other things that you're measuring out while they're at home and you're kind of keeping an eye on, or your staff's keeping an eye on. And chronic care management is just another way to support patients in between office visits. And there's actually several others that I won't go into today. But so I've had at least 2 podcasts on this. So if you are looking for education on that, please go check those out. There are companies that can do that for you, or you can do it yourself. There's different ways to kind of operationalize that, but it can be good money, especially for a multi doc practice or multiple provider practice where you have a large enough patient volume. I mean, you can get a good revenue bump. And so depending on how you want to operationalize that, but it's good for patient care and good for your revenue.
So just give us an example of how it helps the patients.
So it's really about monitoring them and managing them with questions and therapy in between visits. So it's managing that from start to finish in between those visits that helps keep them out of the hospital, especially for patients who have multiple comorbidities or multiple diseases. They have questions that come up, but say they're not due to see their physician for another couple weeks or another couple months. And so it's that way to connect the healthcare provider or the physician with that patient in between. And if they've got things that are going on, then they can address those before it gets too late, right? That's the key.
So now, is that generally covered by insurance?
Yes, most of the time, yes.
Yeah, it seems like that would be advantageous, especially if it's keeping people out of the hospital. It's saving, in the long run, saving healthcare dollars.
Correct. And it's, again, you do have to get organized. It is not something you can blindly just go and implement. You need to have a plan. You need to understand what patients qualify. You need to understand the regulations, how to consent them, what documentation you need. I mean, it does take work putting in place appropriately. So you do want to do it appropriately, because the last thing you want to be doing is billing for something and not documenting it and getting in trouble or getting an audit and that not going well. So again, really focusing on appropriate implementation.
So again, is this something that you help people set up?
We don't, we actually have a partner that we really trust that is on our website, that if you are interested in this, we're happy to connect you guys. Maybe something down the line. We have one practice that does it on their own and they have some good revenue from it. And then we have other practices that outsource this. And so there's kind of either way to do that. And we do work with the practices, especially the larger ones, to say, hey, you should think about this, or have you thought about, doing this? I mean, and it comes down to start to finish processes, patient registration down to patient, payment, closing out the chart. Let's go through each and every single step and see where can we optimize. And we may not have the solution today for that, but we can help you point you in the right direction and say, here's, we got to work on credit card processing. We got to, automate this process. We can't do manual work on this. And so that's really a lot of what our team spends their time doing. And that's where that guide that I was telling you about, we get all the information. And I know it's a lot, but it helps make practices more successful in the end.
Wow. Now, do you do any integration with EMRs?
So we work typically, we have different ways we can do this. So the first thing we're asking a practice is, what is your EMR? What is your practice management or billing software that your current team is using? Is that connected to the EMR? That's the best case scenario. You have an EMR that has a PM software and they're connected. If not, then we have software that, will suggest that the practice could, that we can get to have the billing platform. And then now we've actually been working with a third party to actually integrate different EMRs to PM softwares so that it's not manual, because errors happen. And when errors happen, then rejections happen and then revenue slows down. And so it just depends on the practice, kind of what technology we suggest. But we do have multiple that we work with. And again, we're agnostic to the technology that's used, but we do want to make sure that we have a good automated process. And so we kind of help outline those options with the practice. And that's where my husband's specialty comes in, because he gets software and
Yeah.
he talks language that's well above my pay grade.
Great, great. So now, if there was one thing that you were recommending for a practice to do to up level their revenue, what would it be? If you
Metrics.
could identify one.
Metrics. You have to be measuring your billing metrics. You cannot have blind faith that it's just going to go well.
Yeah.
And you've got to have someone watching. It doesn't need to be the physician. It doesn't need to be, the CEO of the practice. At least not day to day, right? But you need to have some process around that. Maybe that's your office manager, and then the physician is going over it monthly or every other month. But someone needs to be pushing those metrics to the practice. And where I see practices get behind is the biller's not sending it. The practice doesn't understand the metrics or isn't sure where to go look. And then so nobody looks at it. And then you're 6 months down the line, and you're like, my revenue isn't where I thought it should be, or it started to decline. Like, what's going on? And so it's got to be something like, for us, we're looking at, my expectation is the billers are looking at it obviously every day, every week, right? Then leadership is looking at it twice a month, and then the practices are getting it once a month pushed to them. And that's really the best case scenario. You have to look at your metrics. If you don't understand them, that's okay. It's okay not to know. It's not okay to not ask.
Now, we have a question in the chat. Who do I get those metrics from?
Your biller. If your billing team isn't sharing those, I would get off this webinar and go and send an email to them and say, I want you to start sending me monthly billing metrics. I want to see what my AR looks like. So that's your accounts receivable. That's the bucket of money that should be paid to you. And sit with them and say, okay, I want you to walk through these. I want you to explain these to me. And if they're saying to you, I don't know what these mean, we've got a problem. It's time to find a new biller. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, this has been amazing. I applaud you for, for being so proactive, that you saw a need and you and your husband together met that need. And it sounds like you're going to do great things for physicians, so I personally applaud you, and I can't wait to see what your practice or what your business becomes, and I see a lot of room for things to come from this in the future. Like we talked about the training of residents and those kinds of things. And I think, again, that this is one of these important things about, being able to have physicians reclaim medicine. Because I know for me, I was in a practice that was hospital owned, and they would come every month with the metrics, I guess, but we couldn't understand them at all, right? They would give us these spreadsheets, and they were like Greek, and no one could really explain. And then just at the end of the visit, they would say, you guys owe us money. You didn't make any money. And so, how do we need to bridge that gap between, or that gap in knowledge. It's great that we have all the clinical knowledge, but not so great that we don't understand often the finances.
Yeah. And I would say if you're in private practice, it's absolutely critical that you know those numbers. And, I know that's harder to get visibility to in an employed location, but, certainly if you're running your own practice, you've got to make sure that you have a handle on that you understand what's going on, and that you have a way and someone to sit down with and go over that monthly. I mean, I just cannot underscore that enough.
Someone's asking, where can we learn how to translate these forms?
The forms,
I guess, like if again, like I said, the billing department would come to our office with, spreadsheets that I really couldn't understand. I didn't understand how it translated from my visits to the revenue or lack thereof.
in my career, I've always been able to ask and sit down with somebody who's generating those reports. That would be my first go-to place. I'm not sure if the listener is in private practice or employed, but if they're in private practice, sit down with the billing team, sit down with the billing manager, sit down and see, Hey, can you help me understand this? And just take it as it, say those words, help me understand, just help me learn. I just want to understand. I think when we come in and we're saying, well, I want to know what all this is because I want to be paid more, then it kind of gets things
Yeah.
off, even though that may be the premise and the need, and no qualms about that. But I think if you go at it as I need to understand, I want to learn, I want to help the practice grow, I want to help the business of the department, then you're kind of setting yourself up to go, okay, help you. Like, am I coding appropriately? What do these metrics mean? How do I interpret this? How do I help you grow revenue in the practice? Now, if you're a private practice, it's sitting down with your own billing team, whether they're in-house or outsourced, and saying, show me what you measure every month and help me figure out how we can improve on this revenue capture.
So there's another question in the chat. Are there societies or resources that educate physicians? What if that person doesn't know or is a weaker team member? So, how can physicians get better educated on billing and coding?
The professional societies do have coding and educational courses, and there's also the AAPC, which has coding education and coding books and all of that, and specific things for family practice or other subspecialties. So I would start with your professional society and the AAPC.
Sorry, Dr. Heather, what's the AAPC?
And I knew you were going to ask me that. I forget what they stand for.
Okay.
It's something about coding. I'd
I'll
have to look it up.
I'll look it up, guys, and I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, it's coding.
I'll look it up when we're done.
Coding. I should know that off the top of my head. I just know it's AAPC.
Okay.
And of course, if you want, just shoot me an email, info@nationalrevenueconsulting.com. And I'm happy to, depending on your subspecialty, direct you to some courses that make sense. And again, stuff changes frequently with coding. And so you've got to have a team that's helping educate you to those changes and making sure, okay, I'm educating myself. So if I see things that are incorrect and scrubbing the claims, that's getting corrected, So, and that's where it's really important that you really have educated staff to help. So that's just one of my takeaways. Another takeaway is make sure that the staff that you have billing for you are experienced. They're certified billers, they're coders that can help you identify things that should be done and improved.
Okay. So somebody helped us out in the chat. They said it's the American Academy of Professional Coders.
See, thank you guys. Google. I can Google and talk at the same time.
Yes. And then there's another comment. Someone wants to know the essentials high-level view and where to send them to freshen up so we can be maximizing our compensation as a practice. So
I would say a couple things. So again, identifying the metrics is key number one, right? So trending things like charges, receipts, denial rate, AR, so that's your accounts receivable. That is where I would focus as a practice. Start there. Then once you kind of get that data, then you can see, okay, do you have, say you're a 5-physician group. Do you have different physicians billing out different percentages of certain levels of codes? Mm-hmm. So say you've got 5 physicians, you all see kind of the same patient load, right? Or the same patient type. But you've got one that never bills a level 5 or a level 4. They only bill level 3s. And then everybody else is kind of billing a mix of level 3, level 4 with a smaller amount of level 5s. And if you don't know what those words mean, they may not be applicable, but they're E&M codes. So you can kind of start to piecemeal. I would say if you're a practice owner, start with your metrics. Start there. Work with your biller and go, okay, what are you seeing? Because if you're seeing denials, you need to go down the denial rate. If you see coding issues, you need to go down the coding audit route. And that's why having a team member who's looking at those with you, who can understand them, can help teach you, where do you need to focus? Do you see your patient visits going way down? Okay, well, then we need to start thinking about how we're getting patients to come into the office. What are you doing for marketing? How are you filling your appointment slots? How are you making sure that patients are following up when they're due? So it's all of those little strategies that kind of come into play. And again, how do you know how to set KPIs? Your metrics. So I know I've shouted out a whole bunch of different ideas. All of that depends on your metrics. So start with your metrics and then kind of start to deep dive into each of those different areas.
Okay. And then this says, I'm a surgeon. How can I bill for my time when I get calls on home call?
So there are some ways to do telephone coding. If you shoot me an email, I can shoot you some kind of general guides that are out there so that you can have some of that information.
Okay. So now tell us one more time how physicians can sign up for your free training.
Yep. So Metric, we actually do a class on Thursday. So we have one coming up 4 p.m. Eastern on Thursday afternoon on the 20th. If you go to our website, again, that's nationalrevenueconsulting.com, select Metric Mastermind, you can go and sign up for that right there. If you're not going to be able to make that one, you can shoot us an email and we can make sure to get that replay to you.
Great. So now tell us again, you just told us about the website. Tell us about the podcast one more time.
Yep.
And your social media, where we can find you.
Yep.
Because we're going to be looking for you, Dr. Heather.
Okay.
We need your help. We're going to be looking for you.
Okay. So podcast is RevMD, REVMD. That's on Apple Podcasts. That should be easy to find. We do have a Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, also called RevMD. Welcome to come and join, where we just kind of talk billing tips, and then of course our website nationalrevenueconsulting.com. And again, if you're just trying to figure out, gosh, where do I even start? We're happy to just do a 30-minute, understand where you're struggling and help kind of point you in the right direction. Again, we just want to be good partners for any physician who's out there trying to figure out what's going on. So again, don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to, even if you're not looking for a change, we're happy to kind of point you in the right direction.
Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. So again, I applaud you for what you do, and I'm so happy that you joined us this evening.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And again, if you're listening and you're looking for a change, we're happy to help. But more than anything, we just want to educate. So,
okay, hold on, we have new comments. I just want to make sure.
Oh yeah.
So they're asking about the training. Is it interactive or is it pre-recorded?
It's interactive. It's live.
Great. So guys, sign up for this. You need it. All right. Take care. Good night.